Welcome to The Explainer. We humans are an incredibly diverse bunch, especially when it comes to our minds. But for some reason, we love trying to simplify all that wonderful complexity into these neat, simple little boxes. So today, let's dive in and explore why we really need to move beyond this binary view of the human mind. Okay, so let's start with the big one. This is a question you've probably heard a million times, and it gets right to the heart of what we're talking about today. It's a debate that pops up everywhere, right? From pop science books to really heated online arguments. But what does the science actually say? You know the story, right? We're told that male brains are supposedly hardwired for understanding systems. Things like engines or computer code. And female brains, well, they're built for empathy and communication. This idea got really popular thanks to researchers like Simon Baron-Cohen, and it's become a super common way of thinking about sex differences. Now, the scientific idea underpinning all of this is something called brain organization theory. The theory basically goes like this. Before you're even born, hormones like testosterone and estrogen organize your brain into one of two distinct structures, a male one or a female one. Then boom, puberty hits. Another flood of hormones comes along and activates those preset differences. And that's supposed to explain so-called male and female behaviors. But here's the thing. This whole approach, it isn't just a scientific method. It's actually rooted in a much older, much more fundamental idea called typological thinking. And it turns out, this way of thinking is the real weak spot in the whole male versus female brain story. So, what exactly is the problem with thinking in types? Well, let's break it down. Typological thinking is basically when you're searching for the perfect average example of a group. You create this ideal type in your head, and then every real individual who doesn't perfectly match that type is just seen as, well, a minor, unimportant deviation. It's kind of like having a blueprint for a perfect chair and then looking at every actual chair in the world as just a flawed copy, instead of appreciating that there are just tons of different, wonderful kinds of chairs out there. And this way of thinking, it has some really serious blind spots when it comes to science. For one, it completely ignores the massive amount of variation within any group. It also zooms in on just one category, like sex, and makes it seem like it's the most important difference, period. This can even create something called a publication bias, where studies that find no difference between groups are seen as boring and don't get published, which totally skews the evidence. And maybe the biggest risk of all? We start confusing a simple statistical average with a real thing that people are actually supposed to be. So at the end of the day, what you get is this cartoonishly simple picture of our minds. It's a picture that just doesn't capture the complex, messy, beautiful reality of who we are. So if this two types model is wrong, what's the alternative? Well, this brings us to a much more accurate and, frankly, a much more interesting idea: the concept of our minds as mosaics. What's happening is that the goal of the science itself is shifting. The old way was all about studying difference, basically trying to find tiny average differences between groups we'd already decided on, like men and women. The new way is to study diversity. The goal now is to map the full, incredible spectrum of cognitive traits across all individuals, no matter what group they happen to belong to. And this new approach is perfectly captured in what's called the mosaic brain hypothesis, which was proposed by the neuroscientist Daphne Joel. The idea is that our brains aren't one of two types at all. Instead, each and every person's brain is a unique patchwork, a mosaic of different features. Sure, some of those features might be a bit more common in males and some a bit more common in females, but almost no one, and I mean no one, gets a consistent all-male or all-female package deal. Think about what that really means. We don't have just two kinds of brains on this planet. We have billions of unique, individual cognitive mosaics. Each one is a totally different combination of traits. So then, what creates all this incredible diversity? Well, that question takes us beyond another famous oversimplification, that old, tired battle between nature and nurture. For decades, we talked about it like it was a fight, right? Was it your genes or was it your environment, nature or nurture? But the new model is all about interactionism. It's not a competition. It's a constant, dynamic feedback loop where our biology and our environment are continuously shaping each other all the time. And the amazing biological mechanism that makes this whole feedback loop possible is neuroplasticity. See, your brain isn't a fixed piece of hardware that you're stuck with. It's constantly rewiring itself based on your experiences, everything you learn, and even your own actions. It's more like software that's always being updated by life itself. So how does this actually work? Well, you can picture it as a cycle. A person's social context, their culture, their unique experiences can actually trigger epigenetic changes. That means it affects how their genes are expressed. This, in turn, alters their brain's physical structure and function, which then shapes how they behave and interact with the world, which, of course, creates new experiences, starting the cycle all over again. So here's the bottom line, and it's a really crucial point. Our minds are not just the products of our genes. They are being actively and continuously shaped by our culture, our social standing, our education, and our own behavior. The social world literally gets inside our heads and becomes a part of our biology. Okay, but this isn't just some abstract academic debate, right? Shifting from a difference model to a diversity model has profound real-world consequences for all of us. Because that old model of fixed binary differences, it causes real harm. It fuels stereotypes about what careers people are suited for. It creates this sense of biological fatalism, that feeling of, well, it's hardwired, so we can't change it. And that can lead to really misguided policies that just reinforce existing inequalities. And it can even get in the way of developing effective, personalized mental health care. But, and this is the exciting part, embracing the diversity model offers a much better path forward. It absolutely shatters stereotypes by showing just how complex and varied we all are. It reveals that our cognitive traits are not set in stone, they can and do change. This empowers us to create smarter policies that address real social factors. And it opens the door wide open to mental health solutions that treat the individual, not a stereotype. This whole scientific shift really forces us to ask an even bigger, more fundamental question. What does it even mean for a mind to be normal in the first place? And this leads us to a huge paradigm shift in how we think about the mind itself, the idea of neurodiversity. This framework suggests that conditions we've often labeled as disorders, things like autism or ADHD, might not be defects that need to be cured. Instead, they can be seen as natural and totally valid variations within the vast spectrum of human minds. The philosopher of biology, Ron Amundsen, put it perfectly. He said that biology is absolutely filled with examples of different ways of doing the same thing. Variation isn't an error that needs to be corrected. It's a fundamental feature of life itself. So we'll leave you with this thought. If there is no single blueprint for a normal human brain, if we are all, in fact, unique cognitive mosaics, then how should that change the way we design our schools, our workplaces, and our societies? That's the question this new science of the mind is asking all of us to consider. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.